Hello everyone and welcome to this video essay exploring a topic that's about as dry as a Saskatchewan wheat field in July, but considerably more important, the escalating trade war between the U.S. and Canada. Welcome to our deep dive into the escalating U.S. Canada tariff conflict and its significant impact on Canadian farmers. Because while those two old men in ill-fitting suits might think a trade war is just numbers on a spreadsheet, the reality is, it's hitting real people where it hurts. Their wallets, their livelihoods, and in this case, their ability to sell delicious Canadian bacon. And let's be honest, nobody wants to live in a world where Canadian bacon is hard to come by. We're talking reduced market access, rising input costs, and a whole lot of uncertainty for farmers who just want to grow their crops and raise their livestock in peace. So, buckle up, grab a plate of poutine, and let's dive into the messy world of international trade disputes. Now, you might be wondering, John, why should I care about a spat between Canada and the US? I get my maple syrup from that very tall, very friendly cashier at the grocery store, and he hasn't said anything about a shortage. But this isn't about a potential maple syrup drought, though that would be a tragedy of epic proportions. This is about something far more sinister, a 25% tariff slapped on Canadian agricultural exports by our friends down south. That's right, 25%, the kind of number that makes even the most hardened accountant wince. And it's hitting everything from beef and pork to canola oil, which, for those of you unfamiliar, is not just a fancy name for vegetable oil. In 2023 alone, Canada exported over $40 billion in agricultural goods to the US. That's billion with a B. To put that in perspective, that's enough money to buy every single person in Wyoming a lifetime supply of poutine. Now I know what you're thinking, but John, surely there's a good reason for these tariffs, right? Maybe Canada's been secretly exporting moose disguised as SUVs, or flooding the market with passive-aggressive apologies. This trade war stems from a complex web of political posturing, economic anxieties, and frankly, a level of diplomatic finesse that can only be described as using a hockey stick to perform brain surgery. It's messy, it's confusing, and it's hurting the very people who can least afford it, the farmers. Imagine, if you will, being a Canadian farmer who spent years, decades even, building a business, only to have a significant chunk of your market ripped away overnight. That's the reality facing thousands of Canadians right now, and it's a situation that's both deeply unfair and economically unsustainable. The 25% tariff is like a giant, metaphorical wall being erected between two countries that have long prided themselves on their close relationship. It's a lose-lose situation, hurting businesses on both sides of the border and leaving consumers with higher prices and fewer choices. This isn't just about economics, though, it's about the human cost of these policies. Now, if you thought the 25% tariff was bad, hold on to your toques because it gets worse. This trade war isn't just about limiting access to the US market, it's also about driving up the cost of doing business for Canadian farmers. And how, you might ask, are they achieving this feat of economic self-sabotage? Well, by slapping tariffs on agricultural inputs, of course. Yes, you heard that right. Not content with just targeting finished goods, this trade war has escalated to the point where even the things farmers need to grow their crops and raise their livestock are becoming more expensive. It's like going to war with a bakery and deciding to blow up the flour mill first. Take fertilizer, for example. Now, I know what you're thinking. Fertilizer? That doesn't sound very exciting, John. But it's an essential input for agriculture, and thanks to these tariffs, it's becoming increasingly expensive for Canadian farmers. Between January and February of 2025 alone, the price of potash, a key ingredient in fertilizer, shot up from $303 to $348 per short ton. And who do you think ends up footing the bill for these increased costs? That's right, the farmers, and ultimately, the consumers. It's a vicious cycle. Higher input costs mean lower profit margins for farmers, which can lead to reduced production, higher prices for consumers, and in some cases, even force farmers out of business. It's like playing Jenga with the entire agricultural sector, and the only winner is the person who gets to say, "I told you so," as the whole thing comes crashing down. And it's not just fertilizer that's affected. Tariffs on everything from farm machinery to animal feed are putting the squeeze on Canadian farmers, making it harder for them to compete in a global market that's already grappling with its own set of challenges. It's like trying to run a marathon while wearing a suit of armor made of maple syrup. The irony is, these tariffs aren't even achieving their stated goal of protecting American jobs. In fact, they're having the opposite effect. driving up costs for American consumers and businesses, and hurting the very industries they were intended to protect. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It's spectacularly ineffective and likely to leave everyone involved with third-degree burns. Now, let's talk about beef. Specifically, Canadian beef, which, let's be honest, is some of the best in the world. It's grass-fed, it's hormone-free, and it's so good it'll make you want to put on a plaid shirt and start speaking in a vaguely Canadian accent. But thanks to these lovely tariffs, that delicious Canadian beef is becoming increasingly scarce. You see, approximately 75% of Canadian beef exports are destined for the U.S. That's right. 3/4 of all that juicy, flavorful goodness is shipped south of the border, where it's grilled, roasted, and devoured by Americans who probably don't even realize where it came from. And who can blame them? When you're busy enjoying a perfectly cooked steak, the last thing you want to think about is international trade disputes. But here's the thing. Those trade disputes are having a very real impact on the Canadian beef industry. With the threat of a 25% tariff hanging over their heads, many ranchers are being forced to make tough decisions. They're reducing their herds, delaying investments, and some are even considering getting out of the business altogether. Imagine, if you will, being a rancher who spent his entire life building up a herd of prize-winning cattle, only to be told that your biggest market has suddenly become off-limits. It's heartbreaking, it's unfair, and it's a gut punch to an industry that's already struggling. And what happens when Canadian beef becomes scarce? Well, basic economics tells us that prices go up. The entire livestock industry is feeling the pinch, from pork producers to dairy farmers. Now you might be thinking, John, this all sounds incredibly bleak. Is there any hope for Canadian farmers, or are they destined to become collateral damage in this senseless trade war? And to that I say, don't despair, because Canada, despite its reputation for politeness and passive aggression, is not one to back down from a fight, especially when it comes to protecting its own. The Canadian government, in response to these tariffs, has been channeling its inner honey badger, which is to say, it's small, it's fierce, and it's not afraid to spray some unpleasantness in the face of danger. They've implemented retaliatory tariffs on a range of U.S. goods, from bourbon and ketchup to soybeans and orange juice. Because nothing says, don't mess with Canada, like a tariff on breakfast staples. But it's not just about economic retaliation. The Canadian government has also been working hard to support its farmers through these tough times. They've launched marketing campaigns encouraging Canadians to buy local, reminding them that the best way to support their country is to eat their way through this trade war. And let's be honest, who needs American orange juice when you've got fresh Canadian maple syrup? It's sweeter, it's more versatile, and it pairs perfectly with everything from pancakes to bacon to, well, more maple syrup. The government is also considering more direct forms of support, like emergency tax cuts and job creation initiatives aimed at bolstering the agricultural sector. But the government can't do it alone. This is where we, the consumers, come in. We have the power to make a difference, not just by voting with our wallets and supporting Canadian businesses, but also by speaking out against these harmful trade policies. So there you have it, a glimpse into the messy, complicated, and frankly ridiculous world of U.S. Canada trade relations. As we've seen, these tariffs aren't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. They're about real people, real livelihoods, and the future of an industry that's vital to both countries. These developments underscore the interconnectedness of U.S. and Canadian agricultural markets and the far-reaching consequences of trade disputes on farmers and consumers alike. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a farmer in Saskatchewan, a rancher in Alberta, or a barbecue enthusiast in Texas, we're all in this together. And the sooner we realize that cooperation, not conflict, is the only way forward, the better off we'll all be. Thank you for watching. And the next time you're at the grocery store, reach for that Canadian bacon, that maple syrup, that delicious, delicious beef.